Well, thank you both so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we're so
Yeah.
excited to talk to you. Thanks so much
Oh
for
my
doing this.
God. This movie was so good. I watched it last night and I'm obsessed with it. I will say, I woke my children up, my daughters up after I finished and was like, hug me. I love you. And they're like,
I'm
what
glad to
did
hear
you
that.
watch? Leave me alone. But where did you get this idea from?
You know, I think on the one hand, it was really born from a desire to tell a multiverse story in a different way. Trying to tell one that it felt like the stakes were more personal and more intimate. And I think obviously time travel is a close relative of the multiverse, right? And so many time travel movies in the beginning were really more opportunities to tell a fantasy story, right? It was about living among the dinosaurs or being on King Arthur's court or something like that. And it wasn't until you're watching movies like Back to the Future or The Terminator where it felt more intimate and more personal in a way that really resonated with us. So where this came from, on the one hand was, an infinite amount of universes with the differences between each universe be actually infinitely small. And can we tell a story about one person trying to change their circumstances and how frustrating it would be to go from one universe to another and find out they're identical and what would that do to somebody? And then on the other hand, it's a story about, a parent and loss. So, you always write about what scares you. And as a dad of two kids, that's the greatest fear. And what would that do to you? And with the ends of the earth you'd go to try and reverse those circumstances, no matter what, even if it killed you. So that was really the seeds of the idea that really grew into this movie.
You think you would do it if that happened to your kid? Would
I
you?
wouldn't
And
anyone, right?
I
There's
know.
like I think there's one answer, and the unfortunate thing about it, especially the story we're trying to tell here, is that uh, you can't really reverse your fate. You really can't get something that you've lost. Acceptance is the only way through. So yeah, I think hopefully that's what everyone's going into the thing, going, well, it's inevitable. You have to do it. But not always the right path.
Yeah. Can you talk about, and I'm gonna hold this till after it's out, but can you talk about making sure to include there was that time, that universe, whatever, where she was able to see her daughter? Because like I started sobbing. I was like, oh my God, I thought she was gonna go through this whole movie and not have that, you know?
Yeah, that was an exciting moment. I mean, that was when we were first coming up with the idea, we knew, okay, she's going to go through each universe, killing the guy over and over again. And I think when it crystallized and felt like, oh, this is a movie we really want to make, is when we realized, what if she found her daughter and couldn't be with her? So
Mm-hmm.
close yet so far away, and she's changed too much and realized that she'd be no good for her. And that heartbreaking kind of moment just felt like, oh, this is going to make it a movie that's really worth telling. And so, yeah, it was a lovely scene, and it was to shoot, and seeing Michaela do it was great. And she was working with Grace Van Dien, who has played her daughter on a TV show called The Village, and they've got such a close relationship. And so it was, I think, easy for them to get to that place because they have this, really it's more big sister, little sister kind of relationship, but there's a lot of real love there. And so it was exciting to see unfold for us on the day.
So when she was like, I'm not your mom or whatever the line is, I was like, no, I was like crying so hard. I was like, I can't with this. But
Honestly, that got our sound mixer too. He was mixing.
yeah.
He's like, every time I get that scene, I was like, to be able to move your sound mixer, I'll tell you what, that most people in post, they're hard as nails and they won't
Yeah.
react to anything. So yeah, getting Scott on that one felt pretty good.
Yeah, it
Especially
speaks to
like they
Michaela.
watch it over and over, right? So like, and they listen to it over and over, but for it to get them,
Yeah,
like that's impressive.
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what it is like working with Michaela, like the dynamic? Because obviously, like my kids fight all the time. I fight with my sister all the time, still as adults. So what is that dynamic like? All three of you working together?
Yeah, we got a lot of the fighting done back in the day when we were kids making movies together. So we kind of learned that it's no way to make a movie. Uh, so Kevin and I do a lot of prior planning before we get into the shoot so that we can have those disagreements early on and get to the same page. And obviously, there's a lot of trust there. The lovely thing about working with Michaela is she is so on our side, on our team. And when you're looking for the like morale of a film crew, I think it really goes from the top of the call sheet all the way down. And so when you've got your lead actress who's just so can do and happy to be there and excited, that is infectious, thank God. And so we'd love to do everything with Michaela. She's the best.
Oh, I love that. I do want to ask kind of a fun one, or maybe it's not fun. You guys tell me. But like, obviously this is her living the same sort of moments over and over, right? It's not a time loop, it's not anything like that, but it is that same moment over and over. So if you went back to when you were filming this, what is a scene you would like to film over and over because it was fun? And what is one that would be your literal nightmare to have to film over and over?
There's so much that we got to do in this movie that it's like what you dream about doing when you're making movies as a kid, as a film fan, where it's like, what are the toys you get to play with? And of course, that's like, it's like the special effects department, the practical special effects department, who are like, when you meet these guys who do this for a living, they're like pyro kids who went pro. So they're just super fun to hang out with. Richie Cordobles did all of our special effects. And the adjective Richie used to describe everything was bitchin'. He's like, this is gonna be bitchin', man. This is gonna be bitchin'. I'm like, and he was damn right. It always was, and it was super fun. So like, Richie would also describe stuff like when we did the car explosion. He's like, well, we're gonna use these things called propane poppers because they're safer to do, especially out in the desert where it's dry, but they're quick. So we're gonna do six of them all over the car. So instead of at one time, you have a chain reaction to extend the explosion. And then he's like, he'd be describing, so he's like, so it won't be like boom, it'll be like boom, 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 boom. And he does all these hand effects and sound effects. And you're like, I know exactly what he's talking about. So that was always the playground. Every time we got to do an action set piece and you got to let the squibs go off and all that stuff is the great joy. So, I kind of hope every movie gets the opportunity to do that. And if we could spend all day doing that, it would be great. And like the time where we kind of got to do that was we had Jeremy Holm for one extra day, who plays Neville the killer. And he lives in Vermont, so he doesn't live in LA, but we had him for an extra day. And it was at the same time we were shooting process trailer stuff. So Matt and I decided we were going to divide and conquer. We flipped a coin, and one of us was going to go on the process trailer and direct the real movie, and the other guy was going to hang out with Jeremy while Hugo Villaseñor, this amazing makeup effects artist, was going to put all these amazing effects on Neville, and we were going to beat him up and kill him in all sorts of different ways. So I won the coin toss. I got to hang out what we called the kill room all day long, and it was such a joy. It was the repeating loop of killing Jeremy over and over and over again, and it was a true joy. Easiest day, most fun day on set for sure.
That was absolutely the day. The kill room, if you could do that over and over, great. And if there's one thing you didn't want to do, it was being in that process trailer, directing people over walkie-talkie as they're in a car. My day was terrible that day. So yeah, no, it was that day really captured both sides of that one.
How fun was it coming up with different ways to kill him over and over?
Oh, it's so fun, right? I mean, it's a blast. And I think one of the exciting things was you're just trying to figure out, okay, what's something you haven't seen before? And so there's that sort of that gag under the mattress, they're fighting on the ground. And
so cool.
It was Kevin's idea. He's like, what if we did something like that? I was like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty rad. And so we were practicing it, much to my wife's horror, we were practicing it in our back office here and trying it out, and blood all over the wall. We're scrubbing it off again. But it's such a fun thing. And then letting Hugo Villaseñor, our SFX, makeup SFX head, do all that stuff, and just seeing what he can do was a thrill. To just let the guy off the leash and really go after it. It's really fun.
It's so cool. Can you guys talk about the design of the machine? Because like that's cool. And at first I was like, how are the two of them going to fit in there? They were all squished. It was so cool. Obviously,
movie magic is how they got in there.
Yeah, I know. I was like, there's no world. These two they're so close to each other. But can you talk about, coming up with a design that feels like, because she has to be able to lug it around with her.
Yeah, that honestly, the lugging around part, I think was one of the fun things. Like we're big fans of like janky sci-fi gear, when it's not just all chromed out and feeling kind of built for a movie. You want it to look like it actually has miles on it.
Yeah.
And then the practicality of she has a hand cart for the thing, 'cause it's the only way to move this thing around. It's like there's something about it that like I love when something feels so bulky and in the worst way. Like, yeah, that's all you got. That's the only option. But the design of it, was, of course, harkening back to all of our favorite sci-fi, machines and spaceships and all that kind of stuff. It's the DeLorean. It's, every Star Wars spaceship that looks like it's falling apart. So that was the inspiration. And in the script, it was described as a coffin meets a refrigerator. And Charlie Texter and Stephen Dudrow, our art team, we were talking to them how to put like what we were thinking and trying to describe what we had in our minds. And I grabbed some balsa wood and a hot glue gun and I made a little model of what I thought it could look like. And I was like, something, like this with the sides and the whatever. Like, we know what you want. And then they did a much better job developing it in 3D and then building it for real. And it's, that's a pinch me moment when you get to have a cool, sci-fi prop developed from the ground up that, you get to call your own. It was pretty exciting.
It was cool. But I love how like that's not the only device that's out there, right? Like there's that other machine and they're talking about like models and I was like, oh man, this like goes deep. Like this is not like she created this thing and it just so happened, it's like there's that universe where they've discovered this stuff.
Yeah, what does Taylor say? The Epsilon 2 Hondo. She's like, yeah, I got that Epsilon 2 Hondo, not exactly a Lexus. And it's like that space that they're in that was like, okay, I don't know what this is going to look like. Something like the other multiverse machine. And it was so fun seeing Steven and Charlie put that together. Because you go to prop houses out in here in LA, there's tons of cool prop houses with tons of old, machinery and sci-fi gear. And they trucked it all up to the desert and we put it in this big, steel container and built that whole thing from the ground up. That like, I don't know what it was, Matt, on the back. There's like that big valve, looks like it's part of a submarine. I don't know how they honestly got any of that stuff in there, but it was super fun to see that stuff come together and see them piecemeal these little other devices together. And it leads to an imagination of what else these things could look like.
Absolutely. I was watching it yelling at them. I'm like, what are you sitting in there for? Go out. Why are you going to be in this room? What are you doing? Follow them out there. I don't trust these people. Why are you trusting these people? But I love a movie where I can sit there and just like yell at it while I'm watching it. You know what I mean? It's so fun.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you two doing? They're obviously shady. Get out there. But then that really does, it leads to one of my favorite moments, which is when Irene is showing Mia how to shoot a gun. Like they have that like bonding moment. Can you talk about the importance of including that? Because I think that really becomes the catalyst of her kind of taking her in as a daughter figure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it was a really fun part of this story, was figuring out what is their arc as sort of the surrogate mother-daughter situation. In the beginning, it's very like tender and sweet, and she saves her, and then pretty quickly you get those teenage years, where it's like, you don't know anything and I'm going to do this myself. And it was interesting trying to calibrate those moments where Irene has to be very motherly to her, which means like scolding her, but also like you can tell there's love behind there and she just wants to protect this kid. And I think that's one of those moments of seeing that relationship. She gets a little annoyed with the things she's saying in that moment, but she's still tenderly teaching her how to do something that is going to help her become an adult, even if that thing is aiming and shooting a firearm,
Yeah. No, my kids are 14 and 13, just turned 13. Ugh, and I get it. I was like, my kids would absolutely, when she like took off, I was like, oh no, she took her gun, didn't she? I knew it too. I was like, oh, that girl. Can you also talk about, because I loved Mia like from the beginning, she's so fun, because it does remind me of like that rebellious, but can you talk about how you guys didn't, for her backstory, she just says it, right? You don't have those scenes. Can you talk about the decision to do that? Because I actually really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. She gives her a little monologue. There's a certain calibration that goes in with you're finding a girl who has been kidnapped and she's stuck in this place, and it's like if you show too much of that, it immediately becomes repulsive and becomes too hard to handle for the audience, right? At least it is for me personally as an audience member. That's like there's a bridge too far, and so we're skating on that thin ice of like, we know she's in the space, we don't know exactly what happened to her. She can tell us what she's comfortable telling us, and then the audience fills in the blanks up until where they feel comfortable, right? There's a certain amount of ambiguity there for a reason. But within her story, she talks about, that she saw this guy, he needed help with his dog. He's wearing a tie. I didn't think anything of it. And Jeremy brought to the role when he in the previous universe, which timeline wise would have been a day or two prior. He had the idea of when he's leaving the diner to be carrying his dry cleaning with him, which is what he wears to attack Stella or Mia in the movie. And I thought that was such a fun little Easter egg where it's so out of character for this kind of greasy guy back there. He looks so disheveled and he has this nice little thing all set up. So of course that carries through the whole movie, which was I thought was just a fun little thing that Jeremy brought to it that I was excited about.
And I'll add to that, I think one of the important things to Mia's character in that moment, right, is she's going through all of this stuff and her backstory. But we also know that we want her to be funny. We know we want the movie to lighten up in this moment. And it's pretty tough to have this victim be the funny character unless it's her defense mechanism. And so that is really such a huge core to who that character is she's going to make light of the most horrific things because that's the way she can cope with it. And that allows the audience, I think, to get lifted up a little bit there as well. And that's a hard thing to pull off. And I think Stella Marcus is remarkable and really crushed that role in that way.
She's so good. She's so good. But yet, like that line when she says something like he's just the latest bad guy. I was like, oh, this poor girl. Like my heart breaks for her, well, thank you both so much for your time and congratulations on this film. I absolutely loved it. I'm going to watch it again. After last night, I was like, I can't wait to watch this movie again. It's crazy. But it's so good. And it made me kind of think like, I would totally do this. Like instantly, I was like, yep, I would do it. I wouldn't even think about it.
Good.
Me too.
Yeah, likewise.
Well, thanks so much for the word. It really means a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. Congratulations, guys. Well, first of all, thank you both so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Oh my God, I loved this movie. I watched it last night, actually. And I was like, as a mom, I was like, oh my God, I would do the same exact thing. Like, I get it. I would. I really, really would. That's what I was going to ask Michaela. Like, I feel like obviously you have to connect with your person, the character you're playing. But do you feel like if there was something like this in your life, would you continue to go the same route she did?
100%. I think like the stakes are so high when your kid is in danger or in peril. Even on the slightest level, you just go into that like mom mode and like this warrior. I often call myself a mama bear.
Yeah.
I kind of transform into another person if I feel like my kids are being threatened or something, it's like, you can't know, like a mama scorned is just sort of like, right? So reading this film, it made so much sense to me. I have 3 kids. It's like, yeah, that's very much right under the surface at any given moment. So that was the easy part of Irene to connect with.
Yeah. Sure. I literally woke my kids up after the movie and was like, hug me. I love you. They were like, okay, mom, go away. What did you watch? Because they can usually tell. I am definitely going to hold this till it's out because Stella, I have to ask you, what is it like looking at like your dead body? Like, that's going to be wild.
It was honestly, I think I looked at, like I saw an early version of the model that they had, but like because I did get full hair and makeup to be the dead body in the bathroom at one point, but in the trunk of his car, because obviously I'm there and then there's like dead me. So there was this sort of pillow mannequin thing. And I think I saw it like when we did a table read, I think it was like in a trunk somewhere and I looked at it and I was like, fucking amazing. And yeah, hair and makeup was so much fun. That was like the only day I did, I took a time lapse of getting all bloody. And then when we took it off, they basically like covered me in shaving cream and like scrubbed me down. And it was really cool. Cause like, my whole neck is open and there's this like pus coming out of it. It's really gnarly. And I was kind of just like running around set being like, look at my neck. Look at my head is busted open. So that was a lot of fun.
I feel like it would be crazy to like see yourself, but I do love that that's also like her catalyst, right? She like sees herself and then she's like, oh no, I'm absolutely going after this guy. It's not gonna happen, you know.
I will say, just connecting to your last question, that when I watched this movie at home with my family, my mom was like really upset by that image. She was like she had to take a breather when she saw that.
No, I definitely get it. Absolutely. I do want to ask you guys, because this deals with, I wouldn't say like, it's not like time travel, but like if there was a scene that you had to do over and over filming this movie, number one, which would be your favorite one to film over and over, and which one would be your like absolute nightmare to have to film over and over?
Oof.
Which ones did we film over and over? Yeah.
That's true.
It was such a draining experience for my character. So hard to think of one that I would just love to keep. I would say probably the lightest scene for my character was when I was teaching Stella how to shoot the gun.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that as well. Yeah.
That was just kind of like the most easy we are throughout the film, and it's more just like conversational, and the stakes feel like a little bit, it's just like a little more chill, I would say that. And the scene that I'm so glad it's over, and we shot it right at the beginning, was we shot the ending really first, which was
Really?
it was just about like the location and independent filmmaking. You just kind of have to, you know, whatever works, right? And that swamp at the end of the film that I end up in was so disgusting. It was like it's not even water. It was just like swamp, like this heavy liquid. And there were monster bullfrogs just all over. Their little heads popping up. We're not even little, popping up their bug eyes. And I had to get in that nastiness and just kind of like hang there for a bit, because I'm at the end of that dock, and then I had to get under, and I was literally like, am I gonna get sick? Is something gonna happen? Gonna happen to me? I don't trust it's vetted. Like that was gnarly. So I was quite glad when that scene was.
I mean, I think those are two pretty solid contenders. I was gonna say, when you teach me how to shoot the gun, or when I have that real macho energy when I first steal the gun and get like, and then I discover there are no bullets. Also, it was really fun shooting all the Walmart sequences, because that was like literally our first day of filming. And so I was like on such a high, and I just basically got to run around an empty Walmart and like jump over this like banister where they keep the guns over and over and over again, and that was really fun stunt work. And then yeah, I got in the swamp for a minute. I wasn't as immersed in it as Michaela was. I wasn't in there as long as Michaela was, but I did. And then there is a scene to get the shots of Mia in the barrel when the axe comes through. I was in a barrel, and they had cut a hole at the top of it, and were kind of pouring water into it while the camera was on the other end. And that was like 6 or 7 in the morning at the very end of our shoot. Like, so we'd stayed up all night, and so probably wouldn't want to relive that.
That sounds awful. What do you hope it is that people take away from this? Because, you know, I really enjoyed the message of this, and I really like the moment when Irene is like, okay, enough, you know, we can't do this anymore. So what do you guys hope that people kind of take away from it?
You know, I always the line I use for this movie is that it's a morality tale about the perils of revenge. And I think that it's so easy to get caught in this cycle of revenge, and eye for an eye, but what relief are you actually getting? And I think that's the message that is so clear when you walk out of the theater. And I really love that about it.
Yeah.
Stella, for you.
I completely agree. And I think, you know, when Mia's first introduced, her whole thing is I mean, she asks how many times do we get to kill him, because she's filled with this fire, and like so much hatred. That does propel them to the end of the journey, but it's a journey that I think they're grateful to have gone on, but not necessarily one that they're like enjoyed the whole way through. And they say, like Mia says at the end, I don't want to do that again. And so yeah, I think exactly what Michaela said, that find your inner peace, and you know, sometimes revenge is fun, but it's not worth it, not worth your energy.
No, that line when she said that, and you know, Irene's holding her, I like started sobbing. I was like, no, I like felt so bad for her, but like, you know, I'm like, and then what did Irene say? You don't have to. And I was like, oh,
Never, yeah.
my heart, my heart. Michaela, for you, when you first read the scene that, you know, Irene is gonna get to see her daughter, you know, she does get that moment. What was that like for you?
Oh my God. It just like gave me chills, you in bringing it up, because it is such an intense scene. And, you know, in the script, it was challenging because there's not much of a runway for that scene. And it's a very emotional beat, right? So I definitely was feeling anxious about filming that, knowing the timeline of these kinds of movies, and how much time you actually have in the moment. Like, you got to move at a pace, right? So I was concerned about it, but also the nice thing about working with my brothers is there's that trust and that safety, and I know they're going to support me, and they're not going to move on until they have what they need. I love that scene so much. It's so heartbreaking because you realize she's been searching for the whole time, for that sense of relief. It just doesn't exist, actually, and that is so cruel and painful. But we had Grace Van Dien play my daughter, and I've worked with Grace before. I just adore her. So that was really cool because we had that built-in relationship. So it made that scene just a lot easier to get there as quickly as get there.
Yeah, it broke me when she's like, well, I'm not your mom. I'm like, oh, my heart, you know?
Question, totally. Still, yeah, that crushes me, that line.
Yeah. But I think she needed it in order to. And then when she calls me her daughter, basically, she's like, one of my kids left me today. I was like, I love that. Stella, what did that mean for you to see, you know, the connection between the two of them?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of, we were talking about this earlier, how she is like a mother to Mia, and I do kind of like fall under her wing as her child, but they also have this really unique dynamic that isn't inherently maternal, because of, like, you know, she's an adult and I'm a teenager, but she's not 30 years older than me or 40 years older than me, and Mia is not a baby. She kind of like has raised herself, and she kind of is in some ways a fully formed person. But yeah, no, I think that whole sequence is just like heart-wrenching and beautiful. And yeah, she gets this kind of clarity that Irene's been wanting to have the whole time, which is that, yeah, life goes on. And it's been about, you know, her and Mia's relationship the whole time, or you know, not the whole time, but since they met.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Michaela, can you talk about going on the emotional journey of Irene? Because when we meet her, she's already broken down, but it feels like every time she goes and kills him, she gets more and more like in this dark place up until really when she meets Mia, but even continuing on a little bit. Can you talk about kind of getting yourself in that head mind space?
Yeah, I think when I read the script and knowing we're filming out of order and trying to kind of gauge what the arc is, the emotional arc for my character, the thing that gave me a lot of ease is in talking to my brothers about Irene's journey. It's you know, grief is not linear. Grief is how people experience grief. Sometimes you are caught in a deeply emotional state, and it could be several years since this traumatic event happened in your life. So So I think that's what helped me play this character, was like, there are moments when the kill is cold and she's numb to it. And then there are moments when the kill is ramped up, and you can tell, you know, I think in the beginning of the movie, when Neville is in bed and she's kind of caught him off guard, and she's like, where's her body? Like, where is she? And you can just see the emotion bubbling up under the surface. So I think that was helpful as an actor. You're like, it can ebb and flow, actually. And that is that's the human experience. But it was definitely the kind of movie, the kind of role where you can't phone it in. You really you gotta lock in every single day. And that was exhausting. When this movie ended, it was like, okay, time for vacation.
I can imagine. I know it's heavy. It's definitely a lot. And then Stella, for you, you know, we meet Mia and she has all this stuff in her past, which we never see. She kind of talks about it, but can you talk about, you know, kind of using that and her little bit of backstory that we do get to put yourself in her mindset?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, preparation is like a very sacred thing for any actor. And I think a lot of the times I find that when I'm actually like in the moment of shooting a scene, the words actually that are on the page will take me there. But you know, when you're sitting in your trailer and you're getting ready for it or you're working on it at home, I wouldn't say that I necessarily would brood on the specific experiences of Mia to take me into that space. Like, I definitely, when I first got the script, sat and thought through what it must have been like to live at the shelter and among other kids my age with no parental figures, and also, you know, what it must have been like to be sitting in Neville's house before Irene finds me, to prepare for that scene. But I'll say that when she talks about the abuse in her past and her best friends moving away, I think for those sort of really specific emotional things, I probably used my own experiences that I felt relayed the same emotion. But yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. You guys are both incredible. The two of you together are so good. And this movie really did a number on me. But
Yeah, thank you,
in a way, I think it was supposed to. So thank you both so much. And congratulations on everything.
Thank you so much.